There was a time where I feel like my memory was on point. I could have a conversation with somebody, not see them for months, meet up with them, and literally pick up exactly where we left off. Or I could tell you all about a book that I read or a movie that I saw, even if it had been that I hadn't seen it in a while. I never had to study for tests, and I always did well on tests. And then I was in a long-term relationship with somebody that I feel is high on the scale of covert narcissism. And after that, I could read a book, and literally by the time it took me to close the book and look up, I would have forgotten everything I had just read. And that's why in this video, I want to talk about how narcissistic abuse affects your memory. And especially, we're going to focus on a part of our brain called the hippocampus. So if you feel that you've been or are in a relationship with somebody that's high on the scale of NPD, and you've noticed a change in yourself, in your ability to remember things, then you're definitely going to want to watch this video. For those that don't know me, my name is Michele. I'm a survivor myself of narcissistic abuse. I'm now a trauma-informed coach, a somatic experiencing practitioner, and the founder of the Thriver School of Transformation, which is a monthly membership where we meet live on Zoom and we do the inner work together to heal from emotional trauma. So if you're looking for affordable live help, make sure you check out the links in the description below. Here's what we're going to do in this video. First, we're going to talk about two ways that narcissistic abuse affects your memory, whether you're in a relationship with a narcissist now, or maybe that relationship is over and you're still feeling like your memory has been affected. I've also included a very short test that's going to let you kind of take a snapshot and see how well your hippocampus is functioning. And last but not least, I'm going to give you some tips on how to start helping you to reverse what the narcissistic abuse did to your hippocampus. So let's dive in. Let's first understand why we specify that narcissistic abuse affects your hippocampus and your memory. It's not the only thing, obviously, that affects your memory and your hippocampus, but it is something that has a direct correlation with your memory. And the reason is because covert narcissists love, actually any narcissist, love to keep their victims in a state of fear and or anxiety 24/7. That's why we often say that victims of narcissistic abuse are walking on eggshells. What that is essentially saying is that rather than being present in your body, rather than feeling like you're just being, right? You're just living life, you're comfortable in your own skin. No, that's taken away. Every felt sense of safety is taken away in narcissistic abuse. Walking on eggshells is basically like saying, I am never going to let down my guard because something bad is going to happen the second I do. And so, what that does to your brain and to your nervous system, we all have a built-in alarm system. And just like a home alarm is a great thing. It's going to alert you when there's danger. But imagine trying to live in your home with your home alarm going off 24/7. That's going to severely affect not only your emotional health, but eventually even your physical health. You're not going to be able to sleep. It's going to create anxiety. It's going to create chronic stress, right? Well, that's what's happening when we're walking on eggshells. Our inner alarm system, our limbic system is going off 24/7. Now, our limbic system is designed to go off when there's danger, but we are never meant to be living in that alarm state 24/7. But narcissistic abuse does that. The chronic stress and abuse that they create in a relationship is constantly stimulating your amygdala, which is your fear response. And so as a result, this changes your brain. Your amygdala increases in size, which makes sense, right? If I'm working out on one specific muscle, that muscle is going to be bigger than the ones that I'm not working out. So that increases in size. And then on top of it, the stress hormones that are created in our body when we're undergoing chronic stress wind up causing the hippocampus to shrink. So our hippocampus is responsible for our learning and our short-term memory. So think of your hippocampus like your librarian. Okay. And back in the day, when librarians had their Dewey Decimal System and their little index cards to find certain things, that's kind of like what our hippocampus does. So the librarian collects the books and files them in the correct place. Well, our hippocampus takes in what we're going through. And if there's literally no emotional reaction to whatever is happening in our life, that gets, like discarded. But anything that does have any kind of emotional response gets filed away and a timestamp gets placed on it. This is how we're able to have autobiographical memory, right? Where I can remember back when I was in high school, even though it feels like it wasn't that long ago, it was decades ago. And I can feel the distance of that space. That's because my librarian, my hippocampus, has filed those memories in my long-term memory. So, how narcissistic abuse affects our hippocampus is, imagine that librarian, right, is there at the desk taking in all of the books and filing them away, but somebody comes in with like 1,000 books and throws them on her desk. And it's an overload of information. The librarian like just puts them to the side on the desk and keeps on working with the immediate books that are coming in. That overload of books doesn't get filed away. Those books, they get no timestamp placed on them. They're just sitting there on the counter. Well, how does this relate to narcissistic abuse? Well, when you're in a relationship with somebody that is causing so much intense emotional overload for your nervous system, right? Our nervous system is designed to be able to handle stress. The problem with narcissistic abuse is that it's either, if you're with an overt narcissist, it's over the top, too much. It's intense and your nervous system can't handle it. If you're with a covert narcissist, it's so chronic, it's so daily that it causes the same overload as if it was one huge event. So neither one is better or worse in the situation. They are both just as damaging to your hippocampus. And so there's this overload in your nervous system, just like that overload of books that gets dumped on the librarian's desk. And your hippocampus can't place a timestamp on what's happening. So they get placed on the side instead of filed into long-term memory. They get placed in your implicit memory, which is a place of your brain where everything is in the present, and yet it's in your subconscious, so it's outside of your conscious awareness. Okay, let's break down how this affects you if you're in a relationship with a narcissist. If you're in a relationship with a narcissist and you have all of these unfiled, right, memories that are just sitting on the counter, yet outside of your conscious awareness, what will happen is you will be very easily triggered emotionally because even though it's in your subconscious, it's like right there, right beneath the surface. And every time the narcissist does something similar, it's almost like you're going to feel the pain of what they just did, and all the pain of everything that's just outside of your conscious awareness gets together and creates this emotion from that place. And it's this overload of emotion that comes up. Now, what happens as a result of that when you're still in a relationship, and this is the dangerous part, this is why this information is so important, is so that you really understand the danger. And the danger of that is the fact that it will take less and less for the narcissist to provoke an emotional reaction from you. Now, this can be extremely damaging if you're in this relationship because, first of all, you're constantly being provoked into stress and anxiety, which one is going to flood your body with stress hormones, which can lead to getting sick because your body, instead of protecting your organs, is constantly protecting your organism, your whole self. So it's always in fight, flight, freeze, or fawn. And it's not doing the jobs necessary to keep you healthy. So you can wind up physically sick. But the one thing I really want to stress with the danger is how frighteningly damaging this is to your emotional health. Because what will happen is, especially with a covert narcissist that likes to hide what they're doing, because it's so easy to trigger you, because you have so much unfiled, right, trauma that's just beneath the surface, they can do less and less and less to trigger you. And what will happen is you will start actually looking like and being convinced that you are the problem because you're going to start seeing, well, wow, but they don't do that anymore. It's not that bad what they're doing. Why am I having such an intense emotional reaction? This doesn't make sense. I must be the problem. And there is nothing that a covert narcissist would love more than to convince you of that. So that is one of the dangers as a result of not having these memories get filed away due to the damaged hippocampus. Now, for those that are outside of the relationship with the narcissist, those unprocessed memories that are on the counter that our librarian, our hippocampus did not file away, they don't go away when the narcissist goes away. They don't decide to go into your long-term memory because the narcissist is gone. This is the frustrating part. I kind of thought that everything was going to just fall into place. Like, why not? If all toxic people are gone, can I just go back to being myself? No, the brain and the nervous system was changed through negative neuroplasticity, and we have to help it. So even if the narcissist is gone, there are things we have to do to help it. So the way that you might find yourself affected still with your memory challenges after narcissistic abuse and the person is gone out of your life is that you may suffer with emotional flashbacks because those memories are there and they're in the present. They're filed away in the present, almost like imagine there was a fire in one room in your home and somebody closed the door and was like, I don't want to look at that. I don't want to deal with that. Look, everything's beautiful here. But meanwhile, there's a fire raging, right? And it's wreaking havoc in that room and it is spreading. Well, something similar happens when it comes to emotional flashbacks. Even if it was the narcissist that was the one provoking your emotional flashbacks, it's like that fire behind the door that's spreading. That's what happens with emotional flashbacks and emotional triggers. So, for example, let's say every time I was doing something that I loved, the narcissist shamed me, criticized me, attacked me, made me feel awful and unlovable and selfish, right? So I developed this paired association that doing something I love means something bad is going to happen. And every time that something bad happened, the narcissist gave me this nasty look of being pissed off as they were doing it. So my nervous system not only learned that I wasn't allowed to do things that I loved, but it also associates that angry look with all of those memories of being shamed and attacked anytime I did something I love. Now I'm out of the relationship. This is how trauma winds up like seeping into so many different areas of our life that don't make sense. So let's say I'm not even thinking about doing something I love. I walk into the store or I go out with friends, and let's say somebody's in a really bad mood and they have that same angry look that my ex or family member had when they were attacking and shaming me. My nervous system is going to say, that look means this: danger, attack, shaming. And all of a sudden, I'm out with my friends and I'm just doing something. There's no narcissist around, but that emotional flashback is going to make me feel uncomfortable. I'm going to be flooded with emotions that I have not processed yet because of the trauma. And then I might think that it's because of what I was doing. Oh, I'm going out with friends. I'm not safe. And now I'm going to stop going out with my friends. And my world is going to get smaller and smaller. So that's the other danger. If you don't work on healing after narcissistic abuse, especially your nervous system, you're going to find your world getting smaller and smaller. And then it's scary. And I say this from experience because I was like, why can't I do this? This has nothing to do with the narcissist. Why do I not feel comfortable doing this? Why do I not feel comfortable doing that? Just like that fire behind the door spreads and causes damage. When there are stuck, traumatized memories in our nervous system, it spreads and it affects so many different areas of our life. The second way that a damaged hippocampus will be affecting you after narcissistic abuse is it affects your learning. We need our short-term memory in order to be able to learn. And I almost feel like after narcissistic abuse, we all become kind of like Dory in Nemo. I got kids, so it relates, but it's almost like our short-term memory feels non-existent. I feel like this is one of the reasons why people wind up getting addicted to watching and rewatching videos on the narcissist to keep themselves grounded, right? Because they've learned it, but after a period of time, it's like, it almost feels like it's been swiped, and then they have to learn it again. Now, the problem with that kind of healing is that it's almost like you're in symptom management. You learn something about the narcissist, it helps you to really get regrounded in yourself, to get some agency, but then after a little bit of time, you forget it and you got to relearn it again. You forget it, you got to relearn it again, right? So it's symptom management. It keeps us in that loop. It also keeps us giving a lot of time focusing on the narcissist. Now, We need time to focus on them to understand what happened, but it shouldn't have to be a lifelong thing where we always have to go back and relearn it in order to keep ourselves grounded. If we're doing that, that's a sign that our hippocampus needs some help. So if you're in a relationship with a narcissist like this, it can often keep you stuck in the narcissist abuse cycle where the narcissist is really horrible, right? And so you start looking for information. You learn and you're like, oh my goodness, you start applying things that are going to help you have that agency. Then they stop, right? Because they notice that you're changing. So they stop the abuse, which feels so good for your system, thus creating the trauma bond, right? And then because they stop it for a little while, you stop watching the videos, you start trusting it again. And the second you trust it, they go right back into pushing you away and all the things they do that are abusive. And because of a damaged hippocampus, we may not even realize that cycle is happening. Now, I remember at one point in a relationship that I was in, literally realizing that it was a 2-week cycle, 2 week on, 2 week off. It was like 2 weeks of, wow, this is great. 2 weeks, this is horrible. It was very much like a roller coaster, but it was almost like a predictable cycle. And I started noticing that the awful would happen the second I trusted. But because my hippocampus was damaged, I'm not going to lie, I stayed in that cycle for way longer than I even care to admit. So my point is that when your hippocampus is damaged, you may not even realize that cycle and or how long it's been taking place, which keeps you in a relationship with somebody that's essentially killing you slowly. Kind of like the frog that gets in the pot. There's that saying, you put a frog in a pot of boiling water, it jumps out. You put it in room temperature water and you slowly boil it and it boils to death. Well, I kind of feel like narcissistic abuse does that, and a damaged hippocampus is one of the ways that we don't even realize that that heat is going up and we're essentially dying from the inside out. Now, how this might affect somebody that is outside of the relationship, the fact that our inability to learn is that we may feel stuck. We may feel unable to kind of move on with life because we're not able to learn, right? Our learning just doesn't stay with us. And so years can go by, decades can go by, and we can feel as if we're still back there in the abuse. Okay, so if this resonates with you and you're like, oh my goodness, like this is what's happening in my life or has happened, and you're wondering how your hippocampus is, I'm going to give you a small test for you to be able to test how your memory is, how your short-term memory is. First, go get a piece of paper. I'm going to put a list of 10 words here. I encourage you to read the list 3 times. You can read it out loud and then turn away and on a piece of paper, see if you can write how many words you remember and in what order you can remember them, and test your short-term memory. So pause this video and let me know how it goes in the comments below. So don't forget to tell me how you did in the comment section below. But now we're going to shift into, okay, Michele, this happened. My hippocampus is damaged. My memory is shot. What do I do? Is this permanent? No. The amazing thing about our brain is that it can change. In fact, the things that we get stuck in, we're stuck in because of neuroplasticity. We weren't born that way. Unfortunately, we were in circumstances that molded us to be that way. Well, we can now use that molding process and positive neuroplasticity to help our nervous system and our brain. So here are some suggestions that are super helpful when it comes to helping to reverse the damage to our hippocampus. The first one has to do with aerobic exercise. Any moderate to intense aerobic exercise can be helpful, and this is including late in life. So if you're an adult, if you are over 40 or 50, tests have shown that even in late adulthood, aerobic exercise can increase the volume of your hippocampus and reverse the damage. So some things that are helpful to do are walking, biking, running, dancing, hiking, or even playing sports. Number 2, keep your brain stimulated. The more the brain is stimulated, the stronger your neural pathways become. So some things that are helpful to do are puzzles, painting, knitting, gardening, any brain games like memory, where you're actively working your memory. Learning an instrument, a language, or even a new hobby are super helpful. Number 3 is diet. learning how to use foods to help balance your blood sugar and your adrenals. That was something that I learned later on my journey. I didn't realize that I was doing things that accidentally, through food, were throwing me into fight or flight. And really learning how to just make some subtle changes was so helpful for my nervous system. Number 4 is mindfulness. There are 2 ways you can do this. Through mindful meditation, studies have shown that 10 minutes a day of mindful meditation has been shown to shrink your amygdala and increase the volume in your hippocampus. Also, being mindfully present throughout the day, in other words, being in your senses instead of up in your thoughts, ruminating, right? Narcissistic abuse always has us ruminating. But when we're in our body, we're noticing what we're seeing, what we're hearing, what we're feeling, what we're tasting. That is very helpful for the brain. And then the last thing I'm going to mention is to switch things up. So, for example, if you take the same route home from work, try a different route. If every time you get dressed, you put your right shoe on first, put your left shoe on first. Brush your teeth with your opposite hand. Write a note with your opposite hand. All these little things where you switch things up, where your brain actually has to go, oh, we're not doing it that way. That is all helpful ways to work your brain. And the last resource that I want to throw out there is if you're working on healing, then I want to invite you to the School of Transformation, which is where, again, we meet live on Zoom and we do exercises. We do somatic exercises. We do cognitive learning. We have Q&As, coaching sessions, somatic experiencing sessions, trauma release breathwork sessions, EFT workshops. We do so much together and we do it live. It's not a course I throw at you and say, good luck with that. No. I'm present there with you every step of the way. So if you're looking for an affordable, helpful resource on your recovery, I'll leave the link in the description and you can see if it's a good fit for you.